Good evening. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from occupied Cyprus, the Greek Cypriot part of occupied Cyprus on September 17th, 2024. I'm joined this evening by my regular guest, geopolitical analyst extraordinaire and executive director of Free Palestine TV, Laith Marouf from Beirut. Thank you again for joining me, Laith.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to actually speak about this as fast as possible, this big news story that we're here doing this emergency broadcast for.
And this, of course, refers to the terrorist attack perpetrated by Israel this evening in Lebanon. Let me just say at the outset that we are operating here in less than ideal conditions because we were not planning to have this interview, but we're going to do the best that we can, including having to manage a weak internet connection and some background noise. My apologies for that, but it can't be avoided. Laith, what do we know at this stage?
What we know is this afternoon, the Zionists committed a cyber terrorist attack. They targeted parts of the pagers that are in this country, specifically targeting geographic zones like the Bekaa Valley, the south of Lebanon, and the southern suburb of Beirut. For those who don't know, pagers do not use internet or the cell network, use radio waves for the communications. So, this attack resulted in the injury of at least 3,000, according to the Ministry of Health here in Lebanon, 300 of which are, at least 300 are in critical condition, with 9 martyred. 2 of them are children, 1 of them a toddler. And so these are the basic information we know about it. The pagers that were targeted, their batteries exploded. And we know for sure that the Israelis were responsible for this, since the Israeli media is gloating, actually, and have created an military operational name for what happened. They're calling it Operation Under the Belt, because most of the injuries, given that people wear their pagers on their waist, are either in the lower limb and or in the abdomen area. So this, seeing how the Israeli media is gloating shows you another level of their depravity.
There's a certain poetic irony to that operational name, Below the Belt. The Israelis, in typical Zionist fashion, view it as some kind of a clever quip. But to most normal human beings, striking below the belt is considered to be dirty and dishonorable. But on the other side of the border, apparently, this is something to celebrate. In any event, I want to read to you and our audience, Laith, a tweet that was put out by the ever courageous and honorable American Edward Snowden. Personally, I feel he's, if not the finest, one of the finest Americans of our time. And this is one of the tweets he put out this evening. There are 2. I'm going to start with this one. He wrote, "What Israel has just done is, via any method, reckless. They blew up countless numbers of people who were driving, meaning cars out of control, shopping, your children are in the stroller standing behind him in the checkout line, etc. Indistinguishable from terrorism." Laith, I have no doubt that you would agree with these sentiments. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if you blow up thousands of pagers simultaneously, there is going to be widespread collateral damage, because you simply don't know where the pager is at the point in time at which you detonate. Based on what you know, how much of this is collateral damage? In other words, have we learned of cars spinning out of control, people being killed in grocery stores or maimed in grocery stores? Do we have any sense of that at this stage?
Yes, there's many videos filmed by bystanders and security footage of these pagers blowing up in grocery stores and other public spaces like that, and people while they're driving and accidents happening. What we know also is that the vast majority of those who are injured and martyred are actually civilians. And the biggest demographic of those injured and martyred is health workers, given that so many health workers around the world have to deal with the implications of not being able to bring a cell phone into hospitals, and therefore pagers are the safest way to communicate with medical workers in those areas. So this is a deliberate, a vengeful act, and we know now that also it is Unit 8200 of the Israeli military intelligence, Aman services, that committed this attack as revenge for Hezbollah, targeting and destroying their headquarters 2 weeks ago outside Tel Aviv, and killing at least 30 members of the Aman and military intelligence services. So this is the way the Zionists work. When they are faced with a competitor that is facing them on the military field and is winning man to man, military to military, soldier to soldier, what they do is they target civilians in vengeance. So this is a terrorist attack. This is as Ibrahim al-Musawi, member of parliament here in Lebanon, who represents the loyalty bloc that is affiliated with Hezbollah, he said this is a ethnic cleansing crime with all of the components of the ethnic cleansing category legally. And one last thing I would say is that Hezbollah is never shy of announcing their martyrs. And they've already announced one of the martyrs is the son of another member of parliament that belongs to the loyalty bloc. And there's a funeral house that all the politicians in the country since this afternoon are going to and paying their respects to the family. This is the second son of a MP that belongs to the loyalty bloc that has been martyred since the beginning of the genocide in Gaza. So that shows you how Hezbollah and its members and its leadership specifically are always there to give out of their blood and flesh and their families as much as every other member of the resistance in Lebanon. They are part and parcel of the people. They do not separate themselves. It's not like the sons of Netanyahu that are hiding in Florida, right? It's not like the sons of the elite in the Zionist colony that are all sitting in New York, in Toronto, in London, in Paris, and letting the poor of Israel fight this war. Hezbollah is an honorable national liberation movement, and it's giving the best of its nation to the liberation of Palestine.
Funny you should mention that, Laith, because the very reason why I am in occupied Cyprus is to investigate the presence of affluent Israelis here. They have flooded into Cyprus and Greece during the last 11 months as the Zionist genocidal entity has collapsed. But I want to go back to Unit 8200. As I understand it, this is more or less the Israeli equivalent of the NSA, the National Security Agency in the United States. Is that correct?
Oh, no, the Aman is the military intelligence. Okay, so Unit 8200 is part of the military intelligence.
I see.
The CIA will be like the
not the CIA,
Mossad.
the NSA.
Sorry.
The
The
NSA.
the NSA is not also part of the military. And
Right.
there is a military, I don't know the initials for it, but there is a military intelligence apparatus in the US that's separate than NSA. And,
Right. Well, in any event, I understand that the head of Unit 8200 resigned after the retaliatory strikes by the Islamic Resistance. He gave as a reason the massive intelligence failures of October 7th, but for some reason waited until the retaliatory strike on facilities of Unit 8200 to actually resign. Do you have a view about whether or not the resignation was actually tied to wholly or partly the effects of the retaliatory strike on Unit 8200?
Yes, it is definitely 100% related, his resignation, to that. And Hezbollah, which very rarely does this, actually confirmed to Al Mayadeen television that they were managed to actually hit the headquarters of the Amman, multiple buildings in the compound, and that at least 30 of the members of Amman were liquidated. I would say one other resignation or forced resignation or firing that just happened after this attack today on Lebanon is the firing of the Minister of Defense of the Zionist colony. Netanyahu just fired him. So why did that happen? There is clearly a disagreement about the attack that happened today, this cowardly, below the belt, under the belt terrorist attack. And in fact, it's clear that the United States were not informed of this. And the schisms within the Zionist colony and the schisms within the empire are just widening as this war continues. And it's clear that Netanyahu believes the only way he can hide all the chasms that are forming between the parts of the elite in the West around this issue is by forcing an expansion of this war to silence those who are talking about what's happening inside the Zionist colony, what's happening to its military, what's happening on the ground in Gaza and the West Bank. His only option is to expand this war. And looking at Hezbollah's public statement that was issued just shortly after this cowardly terrorist attack, Hezbollah used verses from the Quran, signaling how serious what happened and their response is going to be, and they said that the response will come from places though the Israelis cannot even imagine. Okay, so it may be that Netanyahu gets what he wants finally, because this is different than assassinating a leader in Hezbollah or military apparatuses. This is wide terrorism that covered the whole country, that overtook all the medical needs of the country right now, stretched them to the max, and the vast majority are civilians, and therefore Hezbollah has a responsibility to act in kind. So I want to connect it to one last thing. Yemen yesterday was hitting that hypersonic missile. Abdel Malik al-Houthi, that's the Secretary General of Ansarullah in Yemen, said we are entering stage 5 now of this war, and clearly that is confirmed today by the attack of the Israelis, and we should be expecting a response that we haven't seen the likes of from Hezbollah in this stage 5 of this war.
I just want to park the response for a moment. I have a couple of questions about this. But before we get there and delve into that more deeply, I want to read to you a second tweet from Edward Snowden. As information comes in, this was about 4 hours ago, as information comes in about the exploding beepers in Lebanon, it seems now more likely than not to be implanted explosives, not a hack. Why? Too many consistent, very serious injuries. If it were overheated batteries exploding, you'd expect many more small fires and misfires. And then the Rolling Stone of all outlets put out a piece very quickly. This is by Mac William Bishop, And he says a massive strike targeting hundreds of Hezbollah operatives and their associates via exploding pages was likely the culmination of a complex intelligence operation that took months to execute, according to a Rolling Stone analysis of images and videos related to the attack. As news of injuries related to exploding pages across Beirut began to spread, so too did rumors that Hezbollah operatives were being targeted in a cyber warfare operation designed to make batteries used in secure communication devices explode. Videos of the exploding devices indicate the effect was unlikely to have been achieved due to a hack or cyber warfare operation, a US source tells Rolling Stone, an assertion consistent with this reporter's prior experience with munitions and advanced military training in both explosives and electrical engineering. Instead, it is far more likely that an intelligence organization intercepted the devices, remnants of which match a type of Motorola pager, at some point prior to delivery and retrofitted them with internal explosives designed to be triggered remotely. This is not the only reference I've seen to Motorola this evening. I've seen a couple of other references. You indicated the US government doesn't seem to have been apprised of this. Motorola is known to have very close connections to the military in the United States. Have you heard anything to the effect that Motorola may be, obviously a lot more work would have to be done to establish whether this is in fact the case. But in Lebanon, are people asking whether Motorola or some other company involved in the manufacture or delivery of these devices was possibly cooperating with the Israelis in this terrorist attack?
Look, there is three theories being floated there in the media here in Lebanon, and not by conspiracy theories theorists, but by seasoned military and intelligence experts. And I'm going to list those theories from the most likely to the least likely. And the most likely is that there was a radio jamming interference directed specifically to a geographic zone, that there is a backdoor already in these Motorola pagers, and they are Motorola, and that was created in design for it to allow intelligence agencies of the West or Israel to do this explosion in these batteries, and or that there was a hack. This is still in the the first theory, that there is a hack without the knowledge of Motorola of their software and what have you, that somebody used this weakness and led to this explosion. The second option is that Motorola and the Israelis implanted these explosive devices in the factory before they were sent to Lebanon, and somehow they knew that this shipment was going to reach Hezbollah fighters. But as we see, the vast majority of the injured are not Hezbollah fighters. So this, and the third option is this fantastical Hollywood James Bond option that says that the Israelis intercepted this shipment somehow and implanted these explosives, and that Hezbollah is so stupid that they didn't check on these devices before they handed them out to their members. You see, what you hear in the Rolling Stone and what you're hearing in this other article that you read is asking you to believe that Hezbollah is stupid, that they don't actually open every device that they purchase and investigate before they put it out on the field, which is a ridiculous thing to say. So I think this third option is the least possible to have been the reason that we see the explosion. It could more probably that either Motorola was collaborating with the Israelis to give them a backdoor to these devices, and or the Israelis somehow hacked these devices and directed the batteries to explode. And I would say they are looking at the videos. There's hundreds of videos of people in hospitals with holes this big on their side, in their stomach or on their thigh or on their chest, or where they were putting the pager in the top pocket here. This is not a huge explosion that took out a whole person. I mean, a little bit of C4 would take out somebody's head. Well, you wouldn't see any. There will be no internal organs left. Okay, they will be all out. It's not like a small hole. So it does not make sense that it is implanted explosives, but we will see in the next few hours and days as the Hezbollah and military intelligence and intelligence services here in Lebanon complete their investigation. We'll get more details.
Whatever the reality may be, the fact that this is American-made equipment and that it was used in this fashion on a mass casualty scale, this is one of those, unintended consequences that almost invariably flow from Israel's innovative sadism. A lot of people might be asking themselves in the days and weeks ahead, do I really want to have an electronic device manufactured by a Western corporation attached to my hip, in my purse, in my hand, sitting next to my child as I'm watching television or mowing the lawn? I would imagine that this is going to raise serious questions in the minds of many people, particularly in the non-Western world, about the safety of using devices like this that are manufactured in the West. What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, if you can blow up the battery of a pager, you can blow up the battery of a cell phone. You can blow up the battery of a laptop, or a pad, an iPad, or even smart TVs, or the even bigger issue in the houses here in Lebanon, those lithium batteries that are connected to the solar panels and the smart devices to regulate this lithium battery. So there is bombs everywhere, and the main problem is Western product. So I think the West, it's been now almost a year that the West is committing suicide. They've already started committing suicide when they decided to destroy the gas pipelines of Russia, and destroyed their own economies and slowed down their own progress. And now, with using the technologies that the West is actually the only market that the West has right now in the world is for these luxury electronics that and you could imagine, of course, that all the governments in the world outside the imperial domains, they are going to ask all their staff and members and military and security services to mass dump Western electronic devices. And that's going to lead to what? Even if only if the government services in these countries decide they're not going to use Western devices, suddenly the prices of non-Western electronic devices will be cheaper in the market, right? And therefore, it will drive even the populations to go in that direction. And given all the hacks that we see of media workers, human rights workers, and so on, this is going to be a trend. The West is destroying its own economy by allowing these actions to happen. And I think it's a good day for all of humanity that we dump everything Western.
One of the, again, insane ironies of this behavior is that for the last several years, Western governments, particularly the US hegemon, have waged a relentless campaign against the Chinese technology company Huawei, this extraordinary company, so innovative, massive, producing at relatively low cost technology of the highest caliber. And the pretext we were given for not allowing Huawei to establish itself in various sectors in Western economies was that it was tied too closely to the Chinese government and could be used. Its technology could be used for various nefarious purposes by the Chinese state. And some of us, I'm sure you were one of them, way back then when these arguments were being made, were saying, but wait a moment, we know that the major US technology companies are in bed with the Pentagon and with the CIA. Why would you trust American or other Western-made technology more than Chinese technology? It makes absolutely no sense. I'm sure that this terrorist attack is only going to heighten concerns about that. It certainly should. In any event, I would like to go back to the question of the response, Laith, and something occurred to me when I read a report just before we began speaking about the Iranian ambassador to Lebanon. Apparently, he was lightly injured by one of these exploding pagers. And immediately my mind turned to the Iranian retaliation, which has just not happened, has not yet happened. I would think that now would be an extraordinarily good time for Iran to join in a massive retaliatory strike with the Islamic Resistance, because sympathy is going to be sky high for the Lebanese people. And whatever sympathy remained, in the West for the Zionist regime will have been diminished. The Iranians have already showed an impressive degree of restraint by not having struck back in retaliation for the murder of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran on July 31st. And now they can say quite credibly, look, we waited, we held back, we hoped that something good would come of this. And we've learned yet again that the Zionist regime knows only one type of behavior, and that is constant escalation and terrorism. We have absolutely no choice. What do you think about all of this? Do you think this might be the moment when we finally see the massive Iranian retaliation that we expected after the killing of Haniyeh?
It's hard really to tell. But what I can tell you from what I can analyze for the last few years is that the axis of resistance views Iran as the backbone, as the safe zone, as the producer, financer of the resistance, and would like to keep it as safe as possible. So, it's similar to how people complain every time that Syria is attacked by the Zionists. Why isn't Syria responding? Why isn't Syria responding? Well, it's clear that Syria is the main supply route and producer of weapons handed over to Lebanon and to the resistance in Palestine. And therefore, it is in the top priority interest for the resistance in Lebanon and Palestine not to allow Syria to fall back into that situation of 2011, 2012, when the West made it into a killing field and distracted the Syrian army away from the resistance and delayed what we are seeing today. This war of liberation would have happened in the early 2010s if the West didn't fabricate the Arab Spring with the help of Al Jazeera. So, although all of us want Iran to respond right now, we have to think about the response of Yemen and the actions of Lebanon over the last few days and the last few weeks as actually part of that response. And that the build-up and the intensity escalation, ladder of escalation, whatever you want to call it, is going to be governed by the axis of resistance. They will not be forced into a reactionary position. So even this response of Hezbollah that we will be thinking about now to this horrendous terrorist attack, it will not be something that's going to happen in a minute or two. It's going to be thought out, and it's going to have a result that continues this war of attrition instead of a blow up of full-out scale war that Israel and the West want. This war of attrition that's going to drag on until the American elections happen. The day of the American election, that may be the day that Iran responds, okay? That will force Gaza to be the #1 issue on the ballot. You see, this is where somebody playing chess like Iran will go for and not play the checkers game that the West is throwing in front of us.
Well, it's getting late here in occupied Cyprus. I'm sure the same is true in Lebanon. We're in the same time zone. Laith, thank you so much for joining me on short notice. Just as a closing note, Free Palestine TV is doing yeoman's work in the West Bank, the occupied West Bank. I know you've expanded your coverage there. Please check out Free Palestine TV on Twitter. They also have a website.
Yes, please, freepalestine.video is the website.
Right. And, having so many courageous reporters on the ground in the occupied West Bank reporting in real time is expensive. So please, if you can donate to the coverage that Free Palestine TV is doing, please do so. How can people do that, Laith?
Yes, you can go to the website, freepalestine.video. There's the donation button there. We encourage you to do a monthly subscription donation. This way we can stabilize our donations and expenses. We have already right now 7 reporters on the ground in the West Bank in all parts, reporting 1-2 reports a day, plus our reporters here in South Lebanon. Please, please, please donate on freepalestine.video.
And one last note, I'm actually just a stone's throw away from the British military base, Akrotiri, which has been shoveling massive amounts of weaponry to the genocidal regime in Palestine over the last year. Yesterday, I witnessed a number of warplanes take off from Akrotiri in the direction of Egypt. I don't want to get into the particular details of it, but the next couple of days, you're going to see some reporting from me on that front as well. So for now, this is Dimitri Lascaris and Laith Marouf signing off on September 17th, 2024.